Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to be talking technology. And in particular, technology really that is changing very rapidly because of what's going on in the world. And to me, I find this fascinating. You know, I've always been a technology geek. I'm not one of the early adopters. I do tend to kind of wait for things to settle a bit, but I'm also far from a troglodyte. So, I love tech. Long ago, I worked for tech companies. And so I love that. I love learning more about it. And so joining us today is Wade Hoffman. So welcome, Wade.
Thanks, Deb. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So Wade Hoffman has worked directly with small businesses to Fortune 500 clients in management and consulting roles, ranging from consultant and advisor to fractional COO and CEO. He provides value through business and IT strategy definition, business intelligence and data analytics, information security risk management, and product service delivery management. His experience spans over 30 years and includes a strong track record of success in business development and management of leading-edge technology and service offerings across many vertical industries, including retail, hospitality, transportation, insurance, financial services, telecommunications, education, and manufacturing. So again, Wade, welcome.
Thanks for the nice welcome. Look forward to our discussion today.
Great. Well, it's funny you say that you started in this over 30 years ago. They didn't have the internet back then, right? Al Gore hadn't invented it.
Yeah, the internet was there, but it was more of a government consortium.
Right. It was, and we FTP'd things.
And really the whole idea at that point was between military organizations and government defense organizations to be able to communicate better. And what they realized was that, hey, this has a lot broader applications, and more people started using it. Universities started piling on and using it, for bulletin boards and things of that nature. So yeah, it really quickly evolved. Then, of course, once we got into the late 80s, early 90s, when it became more ubiquitous for all businesses and all individuals.
Right.
So.
Yeah. When businesses started really using it, obviously that was when people went, oh, hey, this is something that we need to invest time, money, all of those things on. But yeah, I remember, having the blue screen and having to type, because I actually worked for a government contractor and, and transmitting data. And then of course that was always the fun part, right?
Exactly.
And the speeds.
Days, right?
Yeah, I could have walked data to wherever it was going much faster sometimes than we could connect.
Yeah, when they came up with 9600 baud modems, right? That was a big deal.
We were like, oh my gosh, and so, and then AOL and what was it, Netscape. Yeah, I am showing my age. Good heavens. But yeah, I mean, it was something that was obviously here to stay. But security and safety and things like that have always been a concern, because whether it's your home computer or something that belongs to the government or a business with proprietary data, we have to protect all of that. And so you've been doing this, as we said, for over 30 years. So tell us how it is, though, that you discovered that this really is your passion in life.
Well, it's kind of ironic because, it stems back to going to college. And when I went to college, I had to declare a major, right? And I really wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I had a computer programming class in high school. And back then it was the old Commodore.
Right.
It's the old DOS. and basic programming language. And I thought it was really interesting, and I thought, computers sound fun. So it was about that much forethought put into it. It wasn't like I had dreamed about, oh, I want to get into technology and computers and all that. And the more I got into it then in college, the more I really appreciated the logical aspect around it, the applications that, were, being used, or, that computers are being leveraged toward, and just the opportunity. I knew it was an enormous growing market at that point. And so it really worked out well for me. But I would have to say it wasn't like I came out of high school knowing exactly what I was going to do. It was more like, okay, I've got to sign up for a major, so I'll pick this one.
Right. This looks cool. This looks fun.
Yeah. And I liked math, math was probably one of my stronger subjects. I wasn't as good in, English and literature and those kinds of things, but math really just kind of stuck with me. So it was kind of a logical approach to take. And I just really kind of gravitated towards it. And then as I worked through the program and then got into my first jobs, really maybe it was the mathematical aspect really got me intrigued by the data analytics side of things. And management of data, that really intrigued me, and I was fortunate to be able to have a number of jobs during my career where that was the focus. How to take advantage of this immense, massive flood of data that we generate every day, and how we could put that to use, to help companies, help businesses, be more efficient, be more productive, help their customers better, serve their client base, things like that. So,
right. And it is just fascinating, especially to realize what the changes have been in the last 30 years. Even just technology. I mean, 30 years ago, we still had dumb terminals, so you had a keyboard, that was attached to the big towery thing somewhere in another building or another room.
Right.
And, and you really didn't do too much. And now we have evolved into AI and, and things that were just, I'm sure if we took somebody from 30 years ago, transported them here, made a TV program about it, they would just be dumbfounded with what we can do. And more importantly, what we can do with this or a watch, and obviously even much smaller technology.
Yeah, just the sheer amount of computing power we walk around with in our pockets today, you would have filled a football field size data center floor 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The things that we do without even thinking about it would have been unimaginable back then. But I think you mentioned earlier, security and, data management and all those things are all, byproducts of that, where now we have to be very focused because of the portability, the accessibility, and the massive amounts of processing power and data that we generate every waking second. Those are now dominant themes of what we have to worry about and manage as we build these solutions and move forward. And our vehicles, everywhere we drive, we're generating massive amounts of data being, in some cases sent back to the manufacturer, to other service providers, which is a really cool thing, but it can be a really scary thing.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, talking to our kids, and they're millennial, just beyond the millennial age, and just the things that we tell them about, they're just amazed that, oh my gosh, this is how fast this evolved. And there's really been no other, call it an industrial revolution. It's the technical revolution. Never has there been that rapid of an evolution that's changed society like this. So we're living in a very unique time that way over this past several decades.
And one of the things that it has done is it has made it a much smaller world, is maybe, because, you're in South Dakota, I'm in Minneapolis, I'm in Atlanta. I mean, so that's 1,000-ish miles, but, we can easily be talking to somebody in the outback of Australia, and doing business with them, or, remote regions in Russia. I mean, all these various places, just like we used to go around the block to talk to somebody just several years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think back, I remember how astounding it was to watch high quality color video on a computer screen. Like you said, back in the 80s, they were dumb terminals. They were just green screen, like you said. They were attached to a controller back in the data center room, wherever that was. and all you could do was type on it, and then it would talk to the the computer, which was a mainframe in those days, wherever that was located. To have all this processing power right at our fingertips, right on our desk or right in our pocket, is what enables a lot of that to happen, of course, plus the availability or ubiquity of high bandwidth connections. And wireless as well, of course, right? That's the other piece of it. That's, now with, 5G coming out, and evolving here, over the next number of years, that'll change things even more in terms of the speed and the quantity and quality of what we can deliver. But again, it brings with it all these other concerns about security and, control and management of those things. So, but yeah, it's really an amazing thing that we're seeing play out here. Even you talk about cloud, what does cloud mean? Well, that was something that really in a concept we were doing for decades. The concept of talking remotely to a data center somewhere else, companies like IBM and AT&T and SunGard were major corporations that had figured that out and were doing it back in the 80s and 90s. The marketing term cloud didn't really come out until the last 10 years or so. But it became a common term because of how much we're subscribing now to these remote services. So accessing applications and services that somebody else is hosting us, just like we did back in the day with IBM and AT&T and everybody else. But now it's the normal way of doing business, and we have much more capacity to deliver those unique services and tools because of the bandwidth, because of the portability, because of the processing power that we carry around with us in our tablets and cell phones. And so I think that's the unique part, is just those things enabled this amazing delivery capacity of all these services and application tools. And that's what's been really amazing to see in this, continuous constant evolution, that we see year over year. That's really the exciting part about this industry. So.
Well, you mentioned the cloud, and that really is the basis for a lot of what's going to be happening going forward. Explain it to us, because as you said, it's been around 10 years. If you've got an iPhone, we all know, ooh, there's the iCloud. I have no data stored on my computer, just my programs. Everything else I have is on the cloud. But, I think so many people really don't know what the cloud is.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of funny because it is a marketing term. It's not a technical term. And back in the day when we put together presentations, when this wasn't so common, you'd have endpoints, right? You'd have that AT&T data center. Today you'd have the AWS or a Microsoft data center. And that was in a remote location. So when you would draw it on a PowerPoint slide, you would have location A talking to location B.
Right, and look kind of like an org chart.
Right, and all the confusing parts in the middle was impossible to draw or to communicate because it had so many pieces and connections and everything. So we would just put a cloud in the middle, even though because it was just kind of like it was an amalgamation.
It went in there and fluffed around for a while, and then
exactly, and it would come out the other side and get to point B, right? And somewhere along the line, in a marketing sense, somebody said, "Oh, we'll just call that the cloud." Well, it's not really the cloud; it's direct connections going from point A to point B. So that point A for me might be my cell phone or my laptop talking to you now. Your point B, but that service is being delivered through the cloud, which is that amalgamation of all these services and connectivity that is being hosted. In this case, we're using Zoom, right? It could be WebEx, it could be Microsoft, it could be any number of services. And like you said, you store your data in the cloud. Well, that cloud is just another point B that you're talking to through a network connection.
It's just a big computer somewhere.
Yeah, and in many cases, it's not going through a cloud. It's going through a fiber connection in the ground to a data center locally in your city or a central office in your neighborhood that then is talking to all these other network providers to get you to point B. Well, it's a lot harder to talk about it like that. So it's way easier to just call it the cloud. And it's going to get there and deliver the data that you stored there. So really what we're talking about is a service being delivered through a direct network connection, either wired or wirelessly, to your endpoint, and your endpoint being either your laptop or your tablet or your cell phone, whatever that device might be, your car, right? You could be doing it through your car, and your car has services now where I can talk to Alexa, or I can talk to the manufacturer and say, hey, I have a service issue, I need help. You know, those are similar kinds of connections. Some people would call it going through the cloud. Well, in a sense, you know, everything's a direct connection, either logical or physical, wireless or wired. And that's where, you know, the cloud really becomes real. And like I said, so we've been doing this for decades.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Nobody called it the cloud because it, you know, you need that marketing term, you know, that was interesting for people to say. And it took the, you know, demystified it, right? It's like, oh, that's the cloud. Okay, great. I don't need to understand how it's going through all these telco providers and wireless connections and security devices, et cetera, et cetera. I just know it's going to get there.
Right.
So,
yeah. You know, years ago, I worked for a company that shall remain nameless. We built satellites. And, you know, and that really was, oh my gosh, that would have been 35 years ago or so. You know, and it was very, I mean, clearly we were doing it for the government. And, you know, and that was, as we were saying, the start of this, where, you know, data went up, it bounced around up there for a while, and then it came back down. And of course, I was just always, and still am, totally amazed that it gets from A to B without problems. You know, even back then, it really was fairly fast.
Right.
But, you know, and that just is one of the things that astounds me, is that this works.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's part of it too. You know, the technology is so amazing in that as the bandwidth speeds have evolved, we've figured out along the way, whether it's a fast connection or slow connection, to be able to deliver that in a quality fashion and consistent fashion. So, you know, with bit correction errors, like you said, you know, it would get from point A to point B and be exactly accurate. Well, you had to build in capabilities to manage that quality and accurate, secure delivery. Just like now we're talking, you know, thousands of miles between Minneapolis and Atlanta. So we have code and decode components that are taking that signal that's going to the cloud and to each other. That ensures that you're seeing a quality picture, you're hearing quality voice, and there's not too much delay.
Right.
And the packets are coming in order. There's no error, there's a low error rate. And if there is an error, it can retransmit fast enough. All those things that are happening behind the scenes that we don't even think about, right? We just get on Zoom or get on whatever service.
And there you are, you know?
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot behind it, but to your point, you know, it's really interesting how it evolved, and but truly how much history is behind it. Like we said, going back 20 years or more.
Right.
Well,
and you go way back, and I mean, we have telegraphs. You know, that was probably, you know, granted we had, you know, it was smoke signals were probably the first true Wi-Fi, right? But yeah, when they developed telegraph, I think that probably really was what started all of this, and those were just, you know, two connections tied together. You know, and you know, and then we obviously evolved from there. You know, but it really is, you know, as we've been saying, it's just incredible that this happens. You know, there's, you know, some little glitches in the video, little glitches in the sound, but not a big deal. You know, and the fact that everybody's using it. My mother is 88 years old. She's on her computer. She has a smartphone. And she just switched. She cut the cord, and her smart TV is now YouTube.
Nice.
And which, you know, and then she asked me questions about it, and I'm like, I know that's beyond me, Mom. But I mean, just the fact that she could do that, and the fact that she knows, I mean, she tells me now I have to click this icon, and I'm like, oh my God, my mom knows. You know? And, you know, and so that really is incredible too, you know, all of these changes. So not only business, but personal, you know, that we've just rapidly moved right along.
Yeah. And truly what really changed that is just the, you know, we talk about Moore's law. That's another thing that it defines, you know, the rapidity, or, you know, how quickly technology evolves, specifically, you know, data data storage capacities and processing powers. And I think it's double. It used to be double every 18 months or something like that, but I think it's evolved from that point. I mean, you think about the sheer processing power that we carry around in our pockets now, like we said earlier, the power of our laptops and things that, you know, we just didn't have access to. The barrier to entry to use those communication tools that were available 20 and 30 years ago, now everybody has access to. And I think that's what, in today's world in particular, was critical in being able to push everybody remote.
Everybody could just pick up their work from their desk at an office and go home and quarantine.
Yeah. And you think about that kind of a social transition in that short amount of time. If it would have happened 20 years ago, it would have been next to impossible to be as productive as we were. I mean, we would have figured it out, right? People always will. Will, you know, adapt and evolve, but to do it and to flip a switch the way
it was one day you were at work, one day you weren't. You were in school, you weren't.
Yeah, exactly. And so you think about, you know, the benefit of having that power and that the capacity to function and work. You know, that is tremendous. And with, you know, like we talked about the video connections, anywhere in the world, I can talk to coworkers, I can talk to clients, I can talk to friends and relatives. You know, the extensive nature of the, you know, now we have fiber going in everywhere, you know, high bandwidth internet access. We still have pockets where we have issues, and now this is really exposing why that's such an issue socially, because there are areas, even our own country, that don't have this, and need it to be able to go home and function effectively and productively. And so those are going to be important things, you know, socially and then politically going forward, because who knows when the next one will happen, where all of a sudden everybody say, oh, time to shut down for a month or two.
I mean, I'm thinking January-ish, but you know, who knows? But yeah, I mean, you mentioned kind of the haves and the have-nots, you know, and there's a variety of reasons for that. You know, I grew up in rural Colorado, so you know, we would have been technically have-nots simply because we were further away from everything. You know, we didn't have cell phone towers and things like that. But you know, the area where I live here in Atlanta is Cobb County. They discovered very early on that a lot of their kids did not have internet access or good, reliable, high-speed internet access, or they had, you know, 6 people all of a sudden on one little thing, you know, all these various things. And so I love this. I thought this was the coolest thing. So all of a sudden they've got all these school buses that aren't doing anything either. And so they equipped them as Wi-Fi routers, and they went and they parked them in, you know, in various places. Now, clearly, you know, it wasn't just the kids, I'm sure, who accessed this, but you know, they turned them into ways that kids could still be able to do their schoolwork, and I just thought that was a great solution. Did it hit everybody? No, obviously not. I mean, there is a limit to the number of buses and things. But I just thought that was a fabulous, you know, and then the other cool thing that they did out of it was they distributed breakfasts and lunches. So, you know, so they really were able to solve several things by doing that. And they did that within a couple weeks. I mean, they pivoted on that really fast.
What a creative and efficient use of resources, right? That's a great story.
So the school bus drivers still kept employed, you know, and all sorts of things.
Food service people and kids that probably were depending on that first meal coming from school, now getting their meal, and they could connect and do homework. And that's amazing. That's a great story. And, you know, we hear stories even in Minnesota. We think of ourselves as pretty progressive as a state. But there are remote areas in Minnesota as well where they don't have access, or they can't afford the high-speed bandwidth. And so we hear stories a lot where moms and dads are driving their kids to a coffee shop or sitting in a McDonald's parking lot.
Sitting in the parking lots.
And so, yeah, it's really exposed that. You know, and that's where, you know, like, you know, our business, the company Earthbend that, you know, that I work for, you know, our whole business is around providing cloud services. But you think about that, where it's like, okay, your barrier to delivering that is dependent on something as much as we think is ubiquitous and common as access to, you know, Wi-Fi, you know, high-speed bandwidth, excuse me. Wow, okay, there's a barrier. So it's beneficial not only to businesses like us, but it's beneficial to just individual families to be able to function. and to be able to function in society.
Right.
And think about how many state and government services now are only available online, or banking services,
Right.
or other things like
Mm-hmm.
that just socially to be able to function, you
Mm-hmm.
have to have access to bandwidth.
Right.
So it's becoming like electricity now. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the dialogue we're hearing
Mm-hmm.
now politically is
Mm-hmm.
people are looking at it more and more like that. It's not just
It's not something fun to have. It
right.
is a necessity.
Right. And the way we're driving how society works
Mm-hmm.
almost mandates that we ensure
Mm-hmm.
everybody has access to it. So it's become an interesting
Mm-hmm.
point of conversation in that sense. And certainly we have lots of government programs through the FCC to fund the build out of that, in all the different areas. I grew up in South Dakota, which is fairly rural, as everyone knows, and there's some pockets though that were well developed, and in terms of bandwidth, put fiber in the ground, or high-speed bandwidth access, various means. But again, those people, are dependent as much as people in, Atlanta or New York, or it doesn't matter where you live. It's just our society today. So, and then that introduces all the components around security and, and things like that too.
And it's interesting because, of course, the pandemic completely changed things. And I don't think that I think what it did was it sped things up more, is more the way that I think of it. And, and I've talked with guests in these past 6 months about, office space. I would not want to be a commercial realtor, because I think a lot of businesses are going to say, hey, we don't need our employees to come in. It's a heck of a lot cheaper for us to buy them a desktop and maybe a router, and all of those various things to equip them to work at home than to have an office space.
Right.
And for a variety, it really is. I think it's going to be a cost thing that they're really going to look at, not just, okay, is it safer? Because something's going to happen with, with either, herd immunity or, all those various things. I mean, eventually that will, but yeah, I think businesses are going to say, hey, this works. This works to have people at home. And, but what I haven't talked with my guests about is exactly what you guys do. It's that technology that allows people to be able to do this, and so that's the fascinating part, because you can put them up on their kitchen table, you can do all those various things, but if they can't communicate with either their coworkers and or their customers or vendors or things like that, doesn't mean anything. And then of course they have to be able to communicate securely. Especially if you're, maybe you're sharing proprietary data, maybe it's, financial data, all these various things, it has got to be secure. And we all know that, the second we do all of this, these little hackers in the world are going, ooh, new challenge.
Right. Well, and it used to just be, to your point, so we provide a variety of business communication services. And through, a variety of different solution components. As we talked before, in the good old days, right? You think back, 20, 30 years ago, it was a physical wire that you talked through, and you had to get a series of phone numbers from your phone company, and they had the phone switch, and you paid a monthly fee. And you might have had your own phone switch if you're fortunate enough and big enough in your own data center. But it wasn't portable, right? You had to go to that desk. That desk had that number, and that phone had that number that you would have to pick up and answer. If you went home, you weren't reachable by that phone, right? So what evolved over time was it switched from those digital, well, first it was analog, and then it became digital. But then from there, it went to what was called voice over IP, or VoIP. That really was what opened the door to allow this kind of capacity to deliver it over a network connection, wherever that network connection was. And so, but it was still just voice at that point. What happened then from there, let's call that sometime in the mid to late 90s, when, VoIP kind of became a concept and was developed and released as a standard. Then you go into the early 2000s. And mid 2000s, and people started saying, well, what if I want to chat, right? I want to chat along.
Yeah, I just don't want to send that Word document.
Right. Or what if I want to talk via video, or what if I want to have other mediums to communicate through. Well, that evolved into what's called unified communications. So the phone solutions then had to expand, and the providers, the vendors that provided that technology expanded that view of it's not just a phone service anymore. It's not a phone application called VoIP. It's now something that provides all different mediums and access points to communicate with, whoever I'm communicating with. And so what enabled that was something called SIP, Session Initiation Protocol. So what that was is basically, think of it like HTTP or HTML, for websites. That's the coding language that presents
makes it bold, makes it, all those various things.
Yeah, it basically gives you what you're looking at in any browser screen that you go to, any website. Well, SIP does the same thing in managing those sessions for whatever vehicle you're talking over. And so that allowed these solutions to blend all those different channels of communication together. Well, the next thing people figured out pretty quickly, though, is, well, kind of like email, do I really want to manage an email server? That's not my business, right? My business is an accounting firm, or my business is a production or manufacturing facility. Someone else can do that way better than I can, either my IT provider or even a big cloud provider like Microsoft or Amazon or Google or somebody like that. Well, very quickly, the same thing happened with UCaaS, Unified Communication as a Service. So in the cloud, right? So you hear that as a service term applied a lot of cases to different, application delivery models in the technology world. And so UCaaS became the term where we pushed our phone, video, chat, SMS communication requirements into a cloud or hosted provider. And that is creating what's known as this massive digital transformation that's in the many tens of billions of dollars a year, and in revenue. By next year, I think just the voice and business communication transition is in the $40 to $50 billion range. And it's a massive market, and it's people that are owning a small business or even a Fortune 500 company looking at, like you said, okay, I'm reevaluating what I'm doing from an office space standpoint. I know I need to be highly portable. I probably won't go one end of the spectrum or the other, but a hybrid. So I maybe have virtual days for my staff and in office days to facilitate teaming and communication or deliverables, whatever. But I know that I need to have them portable in a way that you mentioned earlier. When they go home, they're communicating efficiently, effectively, cost effectively, securely.
Right.
And to a point where it doesn't matter where they're communicating, either with our clients, our partners, internal staff, or peers. It's the same experience, the same high quality experience. And that would be the case whether I'm just talking over video or over the phone in a casual conversation, or if I'm, say, operating a contact center, like a support call center, or an outbound sales organization, or whatever it might be. Those different applications of using those services have to be done in a high quality and consistent manner and securely, right? The last thing I would want is somebody going home and taking their personal cell phone and conducting business with my clients. I want to own those relationships.
Right. Yeah, because you can. It is a control thing, but it's a good control thing.
Right, exactly. And what that does for the staff and employees, it gives total flexibility where I can do my job at home. I can do it on vacation if I need to. I'm available and accessible wherever I am, in all these different mediums, voice, video, chat, even text. Those are all now blended into the UCaaS, and CCaaS would be the alternative, would be the contact center as a service, but basically layered on top of the voice that provides all that great presentation and interaction that you would see like on a website when the chat button pops up, or when you call into a 1-800 number and somebody answers the phone. It could be anywhere in the world. But they're still going to provide you that same high quality service, because they're going to have the ability to tap into the appropriate information to help you quickly, completely, and to your satisfaction.
Right.
And so those are the important things around these evolving cloud-based communication services that our company, Earthbend, is working with our clients and prospects on, but this whole market is evolving in that sense. You know, and that's why that's that massive digital transformation going on right now.
Right. You know, and it is happening to every business. You know, and I mean, I was thinking about brick and mortar places as you were talking about that, you know, where people came into a restaurant, a clothing store, you know, a bookstore, things like that. And, you know, 7 months ago, we went in. Now we don't. And those that have been successful in this transition, or at least are surviving, have been able to switch to doing digital, to doing takeout, to doing shipping. I was talking with a friend of ours who he owns a bookstore in Birmingham, Alabama. And it's a very unique bookstore. They sell signed first editions. That's the only thing they sell, but they're modern. So, you know, it's whatever you'd go to a regular bookstore, but it's been signed by the author, and they sell them at the regular price. It's not, hey, you're going to get this book and it's $50 more. No, it's regular price. And, you know, and he said, you know, they have discovered that for the most part, he said, it's still the same. You know, people go to the website, they have a very good inventory system. You know, of course, that's the other key to this. So you can order online. He said they're shipping out a lot. One of the things, though, that they're missing is they used to do a lot of in-store signings. And I got to meet a Tuskegee Airman. I mean, that was the coolest thing in the world. You know, and so go in and of course, obviously they can't do that. So now what they're doing is, so I asked him, I said, you know, are you doing Zoom type of things? And he said, they took it a different way. They're doing video interviews with, you know, whoever the author is. And then when the book is released, they release that video. And so it is, and he said, people seem to love it, you know, because they're getting the stories, but they're not interacting with the author. So, you know, some people would like that, but he said, you know, they can do these a month in advance and get them done. And they can do a whole bunch of them. And he said, you know, that's what they're really trying to pivot to do. And I thought, you know, that was great. And
when you mentioned, you know, that's a small business, right? And, you know, it's, you know, we all know that small, medium business makes up in the 90% range of our GDP. It's a massive amount. I'm not sure if it's quite that high, but it's a massive amount of the percentage of our GDP. So, you know, you think about how many of those are out there that could take advantage of those kinds of communication capabilities. And then not only that, but be prepared to respond to incoming requests, whether it's somebody wanting to order via the website, via phone, via chat, whatever, you know, or SMS, you know, if they want to send an SMS, say, hey, I like that video, order me the book. But that's the interesting thing about how this technology is so pervasive in terms of how it can support and help any business of any size. You know, so like our business, we have customers that are very small, you know, professional service firms, like a CPA firm might have, you know, a dozen employees or less, all the way up to hundreds and thousands of seats for, you know, Fortune 500 companies. And so the interesting thing about these capabilities that we're talking about that are available to us now really work the same and apply all the same benefits in terms of efficiency, cost effectiveness, you know, security, you know, customer service, you know, all those things apply in the same way, no matter how big or small you are. So some people might say, oh, well, I don't need that. I just use my cell phones for my staff because we're too small. It's like, well, wait a minute. Maybe take a better look at that, because to your point, your friend with the bookstore could have been out of business if they didn't apply those technological advantages. And that's where we talk to our, you know, clients and prospects a lot about, hey, there are so many ways you can use this as a differentiator, and not only differentiate, but also drive all those back end savings and data security protections and things like that along the way, you know, that are so important today as well.
Right. And it does, you know, the key again is security and safety. You know, I remember, it's been a couple years ago now, I interviewed a gentleman on internet security. And, you know, and it was interesting because, you know, one of the things that he was talking about was, you know, how easy it would be to get my home address. And, you know, and he's right. I mean, takes 30
Right.
seconds probably,
Yeah.
because because of how you might register a website, or and
Right.
then there are people who just put their stuff out there. I mean, all these various things.
Yeah.
But I had to laugh because this is when we were still doing it on Skype as opposed to Zoom, but same principle applies. And I told him, I said, we'll be doing the interview on Skype. And I got silence. And then, I was talking to him on the phone, and I said, is there a problem? He said, I don't like to do that. And I said, oh. He said, the government might listen in. And I kind of paused because I thought, oh dear, he's serious. And I said, you do understand this is a podcast, and we hope thousands of people listen in. I said, you can always uninstall it.
Yeah.
But that brings back something that I think people are concerned about. I mean, Zoom has now changed where you either have to put people in the waiting room, or they have to have a password. It annoys me to no end that I have to do that with people that I trust. But I understand why. I mean, it's because people hack into things, and they think that's great fun. And of course, what do? I post the Zoom link on Facebook, and but it is something where security had to catch up, maybe even a lot faster than some of the other technologies.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's where the technology was moving so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the awareness level and the understanding of where those gaps in security were less known.
Right. Yeah. Who would have thought that somebody to hack into your business Zoom conversation? Why would they?
And the other part too, I think that was maybe is problematic, is in that evolution, that rapid evolution of technology and capabilities and application availability and all these services that were available, the thought of security, specifically information security, was still viewed very much as an IT function.
Right.
And that was a misnomer. That was incorrect. And it was always incorrect. Information security and security overall is a business function. And it's the business owners that should be concerned and be promoting and actively involved in moving the security program forward as things continue to evolve. Right. So information security and security overall is an ongoing effort. It's not okay, we put a firewall in place, we've got antivirus on the laptops, check, we're done, move on.
Right. Yeah.
That's a dangerous mindset, because the bad guys are always evolving. The technology is always evolving, and that's creating gaps in your security posture. It's, the onion approach, right? You've got layers of the onion, and that's the best way to secure your organization. And whether it's administrative, physical, or technical security controls, you have to have those in place. But those are business discussions and definitions that have to be, continually had. And that's where I think people fall down. They forget about that fact. Oh no, we've got this stuff in place, we're good.
I've got Norton.
Whatever,
and that's not to, Norton's good. That's not to say.
Right, whichever one you like. But to your point, it's that's something that's become pervasive here. And as we pushed everybody remote, that also adds a whole different level of security concerns to that mix as well. And are you forcing your staff through a virtual private network connection to connect to your services or your internal systems? Do you have dual factor authentication in place, so that if somebody does somehow get credentials, they still can't get in because they don't have the additional authentication? Are you encrypting everything in flight and at rest? So if somebody does steal your data or get access to it, it's worthless anyway, at least unless they're the NSA, the government.
Right.
Listening.
Yeah. I mean, there are some levels that are probably going to figure it out, but more than likely they're not after, the small business owner's credit card database.
Exactly. And even then it would take them an enormous amount of time and resources. So backing up your data. Most people don't back up their data effectively. And so when something does happen, they get hit with ransomware, for example. They don't have a logical, accurate, good next, backup or point in time to go get the data and build it back up. So backup is critical.
And it just occurred to me, I mentioned to you that I put all my data on the cloud.
Right.
All my data is on the cloud.
Right.
What if somebody unplugs the server that they're on? I mean, clearly there'd be I know that they have replicating and things like that, but at the same point, I need to have, maybe every month, maybe every whatever, I need to have copied all my data myself and have
Right.
it on an external hard drive or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and they call that air gapping, right? So, you can have everything online and available and have a backup through different online connected devices, like your cloud data storage service is probably syncing all your devices, right?
Right.
And so if something does get into one of those devices and starts propagating, erasing the data
Right.
or doing
It's
something
going to go
else
from here to here to here.
yeah, all of a sudden, you know what? Hey, guess what? I don't have any quality data source now, but if you've air gapped a backup source of, in increments, now I can go back to a point where I know the data was quality and accurate and then restore from there.
Right.
And that's something else that a lot of people don't do. And, and I'm guilty of it sometimes too. It's like, oh yeah, I've got to plug in my backup drive for my personal data, and
Oh yeah. Well, and I used to do that because I always would think that my computer might die. And so, so now all of a sudden I have ultimate faith in the cloud, and that's really not wise.
Right, exactly. But there's all those things, to your point, that, as the technology evolved, access to these great cloud services have evolved, and they're so ubiquitous now, and they're cheap.
Right.
In some cases free.
Oh yeah.
But guess what? There's a cost to that, right? So you have to be aware of, okay, what am I giving away in terms of control, in terms of my own personal data, in terms of, security and, how well it's being secured. Are they marketing and selling that data information about me? All those things, right? It puts a lot more burden on us if we're doing it right. That's the part that I think people, in society in general, need to just be more aware of. Now, certainly businesses are becoming very aware of it because of the visibility, the press, the legality of it now, the cost that's associated if they do get breached. Those are tremendous things that are very much becoming more front and center with business owners, business management teams, things like that, where even say 5-10 years ago, it was kind of like, we're a small business in South Dakota.
Right.
They don't even know we're here. Well, guess what? As soon as you have a website or you log in on the internet, you're a beacon, you're a little flashing light that says, I'm a target to the bad guys.
Right.
And the easiest ones for them to go after are the small, medium business.
Oh yeah, that don't have nearly the level of security.
Right.
And then if we're backing our stuff up or storing it on, one of the big platforms that everybody uses,
Right.
I mean, it's easy to hack into the ones that everybody uses and just, get gobs and gabs from here and there. I talked to somebody the other day that said, they still internally host everything. And because of that, they didn't want to be, a target of, one of the AHS which is Amazon, or Microsoft or one of the big servers that, people, I mean, you got to hand it to hackers. I mean, which, we always laugh that, it's the 13-year-old kid or the 19-year-old kid in his mom's basement. These are incredibly smart people, and they take these as challenges. You wish they'd use their challenge for good, but they don't. And so if it's somewhere that's the easier it is for them to get it. So if it's on one of the big huge servers, that is easier than trying to go into the little warehouse down the street to get their data.
Yeah, well, and in some ways, though, there's some truth to that, and there's some misnomer to that, because if you think about it, like you said, the server down the street in the warehouse, there's bound to be way less resources applied from a security standpoint.
Oh, definitely.
Around that, right? And so those are easy targets,
right.
If they can find them and identify those. Amazon, IBM.
Oh yeah, they're going to have every latest and greatest bell and whistle that they can.
Right, and so what you're seeing, though, which is really interesting, is so you think about the resources and and how complex the firewalls are and the network switches and routers and we've got things like intrusion detection and all kinds of other things, data loss prevention systems. You don't hear about those getting hacked very often, right? It would take some pretty good inside knowledge and understanding, and it would take a lot of time and money and resources to be able to hack through that. There's still nation states and other people that are doing it and trying and sometimes successfully, but the vast majority now are depending on human error through phishing attempts, right? Email, getting me to click on something because I think it's you sending me an invite to our podcast here.
I got 2 invoices yesterday from companies that they're well-known companies. And of course,
Right.
I was smart enough to hover over the link and see
Right.
that no,
Well,
but yeah, I mean, it could
that's
have been
great to
just as
hear.
easy for me to click on that link and be in
Yeah.
serious trouble.
Yeah. And so you think about that, and that's really how most of the people are getting in now. It just takes one little click, and you
Right.
might even know it. You
Mhm.
might not even know that some sort of a malicious code
Right.
package delivered
Mhm.
into the network environment, and now you're infected. You don't even know it, and they're using you as just a
You're the
drone system.
gateway.
You're basically a bridge to get to other stuff anonymously now. So I mean, those are the things that I think people worry about most now, because we all work very hard. We're working remotely. We don't have that direct oversight necessarily. We've got a lot of work to do. Email is pervasive. It'd be really easy to get in just a routine where I'm working fast and trying to get my work done and click on the wrong thing, and oops, it's too
Right.
late. And if you don't have things encrypted, you don't have things backed up, you don't have multi-factor authentication in place, and all those things we talked about, you're in trouble, right?
Right.
But if you do, guess what? You're in a really good position to recover, to defend against it in the first place, but to recover if it does happen, and to defend yourself in terms of I'm doing what a prudent man would do, prudent man or woman, in terms of a court of law. If somebody said, I'm going to sue you because you lost my data.
Right.
Hey, I'm doing as much as I can, or as
Right.
all the pertinent things. Of course, that also depends on, do you have effective policies in place around your administrative and physical controls, your technical controls, things like that as a business. But in most cases, if you're a small, medium business or a sole proprietor, doing those things that we talked about would be very effective.
Right.
But you think,
I was just going to say, one of the things is, but all the little small business owners, especially if it's a one-person shop or they just went, oh my God, that sounds really expensive. And so they risk it. Right. So, how does a small business owner, how do they implement at least some of these to make an effort to try to protect things?
Well, in reality, and I think that's kind of a misunderstanding. They think that, oh my gosh, I can't.
It seems like it'd be expensive.
Right. But in reality, the things that we're talking about are either free or very inexpensive, right? I can, I don't need to go and invest in an enormously expensive backup solution. As long as I have a backup and do it and manage it even manually on an incremental basis and stick to that plan, as long as I put in place at some basic dual factor solution. In most cases, it comes with all the services I'm subscribing to anyway. If I go into QuickBooks, online, I can set up two-factor authentication. If I use Google Mail or Gmail, I can set up two-factor authentication.
Facebook, all of those.
And it doesn't cost me anything, right? Every laptop now, with its Microsoft or a Mac, I can encrypt my data.
Right.
Servers, same thing. Those are basic things that are very low cost or free in most cases. The other thing that's free, it just takes cost and effort, is defining your overall security policy and approach, and developing some basic procedures around, now who's going to manage the backup, or who's going to control those different aspects of my administrative controls. If somebody gets fired or hired, how do I manage that? Those kinds of things, right?
Right.
Who's controlling my physical security of my premise, my office building, my property, my assets, etc. Who's going to manage my technical assets? And so once you build an asset inventory and then create a plan around what controls I'm putting in place around those, that stuff is just effort in most cases. I can build a plan that's defendable, or defensible, excuse me, if somebody challenged me in what I'm doing, if I'm doing enough, with very low cost. And I think that's where, people are led to believe, oh, I've got to spend money, hundreds of thousands of dollars just to secure my business. And that's not the case at all. You can do very basic things like that and get a long way to protecting your business and your customers and employees.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned the fact that all my data is on the cloud. And if that were to go away, my business would go away.
Yeah.
Fine. I go spend $50, $100, whatever, to buy an external hard drive.
Right. Exactly.
And I've solved the problem. Or I have a redundant iCloud, or so maybe I do an AHS and a Microsoft. I mean, something like that, just to have that replication. And it really probably is $100 or less.
Right. And then you get into some of the things that we were talking about earlier in terms of business communications. In most cases, doing a cloud or a UCaaS communication solution like what we offer, and there's lots of options out there in the market for that type of a solution. But the other aspect of that is now I know my communications are secure,
right?
And it's controlled. I don't have somebody working off of their cell phone with all of my business contacts. So
and saying to their big customer, give me your credit card number and your social security number.
Right, exactly.
They might need that for business, but so does somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens now if that cell phone gets left in a taxi cab or at the restaurant or whatever, it's an exposure then, right? And so that's where the communication piece comes in as a big part of that secure operational model. And so, I mean, that's where, I can pull all those communication mediums together as well and control them and manage them. So if someone says, hey, I'm quitting, I'm going to a competitor, I can turn that communication.
Right. Their passwords, everything are done. Poof.
Right. Yeah, exactly. In a simple, manageable dashboard that can be done from anywhere in the world by the administration team that, either is our team or maybe we outsource that.
Right.
So there's all kinds of great, applications of UCaaS and CCaaS in that respect, and again, you never know. Okay, what if we're talking about the pandemic? What about the forest fires? What about the hurricanes? Right? There's a lot of
things
reasons.
Happen.
Yeah, where you need to be able to make either the business operations portable or the people portable, and those kinds of communication solutions are absolutely critical to be able to deliver on that, because you couldn't do it if you said, okay, everybody go home and jump on your cell phone.
Right.
If, okay, well, now how do all my clients calling into the 1-800 number, I'm going to figure out how to forward them to individual cell phones.
And how do we forward, potentially 50 people calling into,
Right. But with these, it has a mobile app that looks just like my desk phone screen on my cell phone. Same thing on my computer screen. If I just want to talk like we're talking on my computer screen, I can do that, sit in my laptop on my couch, and that's my new office.
Yep.
But now me as a business knows that all the communication is being directed in a common, consistent, high quality fashion and securely.
Right.
And that's critical as part of that security posture as well. And again, whether you're a small, medium business or you're a large Fortune 500 company, the same, requirements are there, and the same, application approaches are there. So, it's like you said early on, this has evolved in ways we never would have imagined. But the good news, we had all these tools, we just never bothered to prove that.
Right. Yeah. It was like, oh yeah, we can do that. Oh, now we have to do that now.
Right. Unfortunately, it went off very smoothly.
Right.
And so it's been great discussion though.
It has been, and I think we should do it again in maybe 6 months to see, what has changed, because I think we will evolve more into, many more people working from home, hybrid models, all of these various things. And just to see, how things are going. It's funny. A friend of mine posted on Facebook yesterday that her brand new latest and greatest state-of-the-art VPN wouldn't talk to Amazon. And she was like, I can't place my Amazon order, and that's where I got this from. and I'm pretty sure that, within a day or two, Amazon will have that fixed. But I was like, whoops, that didn't quite work right. But I mean, it is fascinating just to see how everything is evolving.
Yeah. And you think about, not only are we doing it, schools are doing it.
Right.
All the kids are at home now and fighting for bandwidth with their parents.
Oh, yeah. I have a friend that has 4 kids and a husband on her on a router that was built for maybe, one person to be watching a movie on. And she said, this isn't going to work.
Time to upgrade, right?
Time to upgrade. I mean, some companies are obviously booming because of this. And, that's just the way things happen.
Yeah. And we feel that way. We feel very fortunate we're in the space we're in, because this will be a predominant piece of how businesses operate going forward. But the other part that's going to grow and continue to evolve is security that we talked about. But I mean, it's, I think you're right. It'll be interesting to see how it evolves over the next 6 to 8 months as we move into the next phase of this pandemic and what's happening now.
Especially if we have another major shutdown. I think that's
Yes.
probably going to really drive what happens.
Right. And as we go into the winter
Mm-hmm.
months for many of the states in the country, that now you can't be outside, you can't social
Cooties
distance.
are now inside.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's where working from home, quietly will be kind of nice, right? I don't have to be around a lot of people. But I do miss, and I think everybody does. I talk to a lot of people,
the socialization part.
Yeah, it's important, right? And it's a big part of our social environment, but also our work environment. Collaboration and everything really puts on a different tone.
And just talking about the football game last night while you're getting a cup of coffee.
Right. Yeah, building
cool.
those relationships.
Well, oh my gosh, Wade, we are at the top of the hour. Tell us briefly what Earthbend does and how you can work with people.
Okay, well, yeah, we provide a variety of cloud application services, as we talked about, primarily voice, so UCaaS, Unified Communications as a Service, which is voice, video, chat, SMS, and then we can also integrate that into any of like your Salesforce or any of your other CRM, customer relationship management systems, or accounting systems, whatever that might be. We also provide contact center as a service, which is that layer that sits on top of the voice that is what presents your business environment and all of your resources to your customer base and your prospect base. So whether it's a chat via website or it's SMS, text or voice or video, like we're talking, all that can then be blended in and provide a better experience for your customers and your partners. Another area that we've gotten into over the last 8 to 10 years is what's called IoT, Internet of Things. People a lot of times think of the refrigerator talking to the grocery store, saying, right? That's kind of the big example of IoT. But our IoT solutions really focus primarily on physical door access control, video surveillance, whether it's just pure high definition video or maybe even temperature sensing monitors for like people walking through an entryway. We also do controls for like air, water, and quality of whether it's CO2, smoke detection, etc. Asset monitoring, whether it's water or fuel or chemical tanks, all kinds of industrial controls. That whole IoT space, we've also figured out how to deliver via cloud, and it's been very effective. We've got a really nice market there as well. And then we also provide all those services and other products. A lot of times people say, well, I want to set up a voice service through the cloud. Well, I still need to buy phones. I still need to buy speaker phones. I might need a switch and a router and a server that goes with that. So we have a distribution team that is kind of more like a co-op. So we provide that as a service to all of our resellers around the US and Canada. But then they can provide all of that together as one purchase point to their customers. So it makes it real easy for them. So but primarily it's all about the cloud services, voice, contact center, and Internet of Things. So
cool. I love it. I love it. And you can find all of that at earthbend.com. Makes it very easy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So if people want to connect with you directly, Wade, how would they do that?
Certainly just send me an email at earthbend.com, wade.hoffman@earthbend.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Just search for Wade Hoffman and at Earthbend. And those are the vehicles that I use predominantly, and I look forward to communicating with if anyone has any questions or wants to talk more about what we discussed today.
I love it. I love it. Well, do you have any final thoughts for everyone?
I think the key was what you opened with. Just the evolution of this has been so amazing, intriguing, challenging in some ways, but I think about what we're going through right now, how beneficial it is. But it has to be managed, and it has to be managed securely and efficiently. And I think that's where, people like our company can really help. And there's lots of us out there, of course. But I think I also like your point about what about what's it like in 6 to 8 months. And I'm anxious to come back and talk to you then, and say, okay, wow, now what's changed?
Now what? Eek.
What have we proven now that works or doesn't work, right? And I think to that point, it's an ongoing evolution. It never ends, right? And that's the exciting thing about technology, whether it's security or communications or data management, things like that are always evolving. And so there's never a shortage of topics to talk about. So I'm looking forward to the next discussion.
Yeah, it'll be great fun. It'll be great fun. Well, until then, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a great conversation with Wade Hoffman, and everyone have a great day.
Thanks, Deb.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.